Welcome to Keto Meals and Recipes.com. Today I'm featuring my adapted Keto Black Forest Cheesecake. This is in celebration and as a very special thank you to all of my 40,000 subscribers. I can't believe that we've reached this milestone. To each and everyone who has taken time to subscribe, thank you. I'm very grateful to all of you for subscribing. First of all, I want to explain what inspired me to make this Black Forest cheesecake. And it started with it's cherry season, and I absolutely love cherries, but because cherries are very high in fructose and very sweet, unfortunately they're far too sweet for me to eat. Even just 3 cherries greatly increases my blood sugar. And the other reason I wanted to make this cake as a special thank you is because one of my favorite cakes has always been the German classic Black Forest cake. And I wanted to share this recipe on this momentous occasion with all of you. As I said, I know that cherries are very high in fructose, but keep listening because I will discuss this point in the video and also provide for you a tasty, much lower carb option, as well as give you the macro breakdown if you do choose to use cherries, because you're not that sensitive to fructose. So, in other words, 2 ways of making this cake. You may notice that a very important thing about this video is that I have simplified this recipe and detailed each step, so even if you're a brand new baker or new to cooking, you'll be able to follow along and make this amazing recipe. So let's get started and follow along with the step-by-step instructions to make this keto cheesecake adaptation. Now, the macronutrient ratio for the Black Forest Cheesecake version 1 is 5:1 with 6.6 grams of total carbs, 1.1 gram of dietary fiber, resulting in 5.5 grams of net carbs per slice of cake. Now let's get started, and please follow along as I describe each step to ensure that you are successful when making this amazing treat. The first step is to make this really rich, flourless chocolate cake. For this cake, you will also need to make a batch of my chocolate truffles. I have demonstrated and explained how to make these truffles many times, so I'll just provide the link in the description below for you to check out the video and the recipe so that you can make it. It's very quick and easy. And if you're not familiar with how I do things, I want you to know that all videos and written recipe links that I mention, as well as the link for this particular written recipe for the Black Forest Cheesecake, are all provided below the YouTube thumbnail and description, so check them out there, please. Now to keep going with the recipe. After you make the chocolate truffles, you'll realize you do not need the entire amount of the chocolate truffle liquid. You will only need about 200 grams, so set that quantity aside to cool to room temperature, and then use the rest to make your favorite shaped chocolate truffles. Next, preheat your oven to 150 degrees Celsius or 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And also place parchment paper on a 17 centimeter by 42 centimeter or 11 inch by 17 inch baking sheet. At this point, I also bloom the gelatin by sprinkling the powdered gelatin into my glass of cold water, stirring well until the gelatin is completely dissolved, and then just setting it aside for about 10 minutes in order to allow the gelatin to bloom. For the next step, you're going to need 2 separate bowls in order to separate the eggs. Place the yolks into one mixing bowl and the whites into another mixing bowl. I'm going to put them directly into my stand mixer bowl. Now get the bowl with the chocolate truffle liquid. Pour the room temperature chocolate truffle liquid into the egg yolks. Whisk everything together to combine well and set this aside. Next, whip the egg whites until all the albumin has been whipped and is frothy. At this point, add the lemon juice, or if you prefer, white vinegar, and continue whipping until the egg whites have formed a stiff peak stage. Scoop out about 1/3 of the egg whites and transfer to the bowl with the chocolate egg mixture and whip vigorously together. This will aerate and lighten the egg yolks and make it much easier to blend with the rest of the egg whites. Then transfer a 2/3 of the whipped egg whites to the chocolate yolk bowl and gently fold to combine. While you're folding, be very careful not to deflate the whipped egg whites. And then just repeat with the last third of the egg whites. Try to get most of the whites integrated into the chocolate, but don't worry if you don't get all of it. Pour the cake batter into the prepared parchment-lined baking sheet. Spread the batter out to form a rectangle that is about 3/4 inch or 2 centimeters thick. Just use a spatula to level things out so that it's the same thickness all the way through. For layered cakes, I like using the flat cookie sheet method. I like this method because I get a very even and thin layer of cake, and it bakes very quickly and evenly. However, if you don't like doing the cookie sheet method, an alternative is you can prepare the same cake by using a 9-inch springform pan and just make a regular cake, and then once the cake is cooled, divide it into 2 layers. Both methods work. I just find that I get a much nicer, thinner result by using my sheet pan method, which is more in keeping of what I want for this cake. Next, put your baking sheet into the middle position of your oven and set your timer for 20 minutes. Depending how evenly your oven heats, you may want to rotate the entire pan after the first 10 minutes to ensure even baking. Test your cake for doneness by touching the center and see if it springs back properly, or insert a toothpick and make sure that it comes out dry. If for whatever reason the cake is not done, put it back in the oven and bake for 2 to 5 minutes, no longer. You will find that the cake will dry out and will not be soft and moist. So having taken this out of the oven, let your sheet of cake cool in the pan. And then 10 to 15 minutes later, place a sheet of parchment on top of the cake and use some sort of wire rack or your cooling rack to flip it over. Then peel off the parchment that was under the cake and let the cake rest upside down while you make the no-bake cheesecake. To make things easier, first remelt the gelatin and let the gelatin get to room temperature. As you can see on this table, I've assembled all the ingredients that you'll need for the no-bake cheesecake. I'd like to remind you that the cream cheese and ricotta cheese should be at room temperature. This will help create a much creamier and even textured cheesecake. So place the cream cheese and ricotta into a mixing bowl and whip at high speed continuously, both to soften and to remove any lumpy cheese bits. Add your sweetener that you ground to a confectionery powder and also add the lemon juice. Don't forget to scrape the bowl once in a while to ensure that all of the cream cheese that may be stuck to the side or bottom is also incorporated into this mixture. Now add your vanilla and continue whipping to combine. While you continue whipping, slowly pour the melted gelatin into the center part of the cheesecake mixture and continue whipping until everything is well combined and all the ingredients are nice and creamy and smooth and everything is lump-free and the texture looks very velvety. And move this bowl aside for a moment while you whip up the heavy whipping cream to a medium stiffness stage. At which point you simply just pour in the whipped cream into the bowl with the cream cheese mixture and fold thoroughly until everything is well combined. And you guessed it, set aside on your counter so you can get everything together in order that you can assemble the Black Forest cheesecake. Now, to assemble the Black Forest cheesecake, choose either a square or round springform pan. It really doesn't matter which. But do fit a parchment sheet on the bottom of the springform pan. And in order to make it easier to remove the cake from the pan, line the sides of the pan with parchment. So, after deciding if you're going to make it a circle or a rectangle, you'll need to cut out 2 shapes from your flat sheet of cake. As you can see, oops, I sort of didn't have enough room, but that's okay. Lay the less nice piece of cake, if this is your situation like mine, on the bottom of the lined springform pan. As you do this, you may be wondering, what do I do with the rest of the scraps of cake? Ooh, I have a good suggestion for you here. May I suggest that you use these pieces of cake cut up into cubes as a replacement for my keto Oreo cookies, and use these pieces to make my easy tiramisu parfait. I'll provide the link for this in the description below as well. Okay, back to business. Pour half of your no-bake cheesecake mixture on top of the chocolate cake layer. and smooth it out with your spatula. For my purposes, and to keep the carbs as low as possible, I'm going to use strawberries. However, this is the point where you can substitute an equal amount of fresh cut up cherry pieces if you're not affected by the fructose and you can tolerate a few extra carbs. As I said, I'm using strawberry pieces for this version. Gently place, do not press, the strawberry pieces on top of this cheesecake layer. And while you're doing this, arrange some of the strawberry pieces so that you can see them from the outside, and you'll have kind of a ribbon of red in the center of your cake. It's not necessary to do this, I just think it looks really nice. And I do this with either strawberries or the cherry version. Having distributed all of my strawberries on top, I'm going to pour the rest of the cheesecake on top of the strawberries, and this time carefully smooth the surface. In order for the cheesecake to set, I highly recommend you cover the cake with cling wrap and refrigerate overnight. I think it's important to leave it overnight because of the very thick layer of cheesecake and because you have it in a springform pan. As a result of this, it will set a little bit more slowly. It's now the next morning and I'm going to finish and garnish this cake. First, place the second piece of the chocolate cake, which you cut out the other day, on top of the cheesecake. By the way, you don't have to refrigerate the chocolate cake overnight. It'll be fine. Just cover it with some cling wrap so that it doesn't completely dry out. As you're laying the cake, this time put the smoother side up. Before I forget, I want to mention that I will be using a little bit more whipped cream, and put this whipped cream into a piping bag in which I've already put a decorative tip. Before proceeding, gently and carefully loosen the springform pan and remove the cake from the springform pan. Here's a little tip I've discovered I'd like to share with you. In order to help the chocolate shavings stick to the cake and not just fall off each time you cut a slice, spread a thin layer of your whipped cream on top of the chocolate cake. Do so all the way to the edges of the cake. Then sprinkle the roughly chopped, or if you prefer, grated shavings over the surface. Stop at about 1/2 inch or 2 centimeters from the edge of the cake. And lastly, take your piping bag with the whipped cream and squeeze out a decorative perimeter of your choice. Because this cake is already fancy enough, I thought that just simple continuous swirl was a really nice way to go. When you make this cake, please do take a photo and tag me on Instagram. I'd love to see how you've decorated it, and also let me know what your friends and family thought of this cake. I think this looks really nice. So that this cake is much easier for you to cut and to allow the soft whipped cream to set, I would strongly recommend that you put it into the fridge for about 30 to 60 minutes before you cut and serve. As I said at the beginning, I am absolutely flabbergasted that so many of you have complimented me and subscribed. Thank you again to each and every person who has subscribed, all 40,000 of you. And I look forward to our next milestone, 50,000. So do share this link with people that you know that may also like the channel and or the recipes. Now for the alternative. Here's the macronutrient chart for the low-carb Black Forest cake with black cherries. As I've already explained, as a diabetic, I find that very small quantities of cherries, due to their high fructose, affect me negatively and raise my blood sugar. So I can't make this version, but if you want a more authentic Black Forest cheesecake, all you have to do is follow the same steps up to the point where you're using strawberries. At this point, you simply replace the strawberry pieces with pitted and quartered fresh cherries. If you're super motivated and want a more classic version, however, an alternative to using just fresh cherries, you may instead want to make the cherry syrup. It's the same recipe as the one that I used to make my blueberry syrup. The difference in the instructions, though, would be not to puree the cherries after you've cooked them. You want the cherries to remain chunky. And after making the syrup, it's really important that you let the whole thing cool to room temperature. Once your cherry syrup is completely cool, just pour it on top of the first layer of cheesecake as we did with the strawberries. And the rest of the instructions are the same. If you are making the cherry version, you may want to use a few of the whole cherries as garnish on top of the cake. Whichever way you choose to make it, with strawberries, fresh cherries, or the cherry syrup, I hope that you will agree that this is a delicious Black Forest cheesecake. But because this cake is so good, you may be tempted, but I'd like to caution you, remember portion control. Thank you so much for watching this 40,000 subscriber special cake video. And if you like this video, please help me reach my next milestone of 50,000 subscriber by sharing this recipe and link with someone that you know. Leave me a comment and give me a thumbs up. My community is very important to me, and each and every one of you means so much to me. Please let me know if there's any other cake or any special recipe that you would like me to make in future videos. Please come back and check out the next video when it's posted. In the meanwhile, have a safe, healthy, and happy day. Cheers!